Going to do something a little bit different today. We haven't done it for quite a while. You know, with all of the changes that are going on, and we've been talking about a lot of them over the last few months, and everything just keeps changing, it seems daily, in the world. One of the things I know, like you, one of the things I like to do is to find some wise people, somebody that I think has a broad perspective, somebody that could add some insights and really help me understand at least a little bit better what's going on, and I think you as well. Today, I'm just honored to be able to invite Lynn Laughlin up to the stage because I've known Lynn my whole life, literally. I think I was probably born on a Friday and met him the next Friday or something, I don't know. A lot of close family connections there, but his role at Lincoln Christian University, he'll tell you how many years in just a little bit, but has left a huge impact. And just recently, Lynn has stepped down from a very active role. He's not in retirement because he still works, okay? But it's for the university, and I just wanted to get him here, okay? To be able to share with us so that we can kind of pick his brain and also just appreciate all that he's done for the kingdom of God. So, Lynn Laughlin, would you please come join me on stage, please? And would you help me welcome Lynn? Okay, Lynn, I think I've got 20 questions for you today. And,
I thought there was only 18.
Okay, well, you know.
Okay, that's fine.
I'll throw in a couple of extras. How about that?
Okay, that's fine.
First of all, how many years total have you been in ministry, okay? And what in the world ever made you want to go into ministry?
I've actually been in ministry. I was thinking about that, and David sent me these questions yesterday. No, I'm just kidding. He sent them.
I could have waited till this morning.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I think I started when I was a senior in high school, and then when I was a freshman, we had a guy who was a youth minister at our church at Westside where I grew up, and I think I was teaching, helping with 5th and 6th grade youth group, and that would have been in the fall of '60, so
wow.
1960. So, some people would refer to as 1860. Yeah, okay, but that's about when I started. So, right at 60 years of ministry.
Wow.
And it has gone on. I mean, beyond the point of being involved with the youth there. I think I preached my first sermon when I was a freshman because I played basketball. Mr. Henderson was my coach my junior and senior year, but his first 2 years he wasn't at school yet. He was down at Louisville getting his doctor's degree. So I actually, the coach didn't ask me, he told me I was going to preach for him over at Liderberry. So went over to Liderberry and preached my first sermon. And then that's the summer of my sophomore year, I started full-time with preaching. And then by January the following, when I was a junior then, I ended up going to Pleasant Hill Christian Church and ministering there and driving back and forth to Lincoln during that time.
So you've been in ministry as long as I've been on this earth?
Apparently, longer. Okay.
So, that's pretty awesome. So Lynn, based on your years on earth and just the wisdom that God's given to you, and you've seen what all's going on in the world today, what concerns you the most about what you see happening?
I would guess my biggest angst is the fact that what I observe and what I see is what's happening, not necessarily in the world, but what's happening with the church. Okay. And I have a very strong opinion from the standpoint of, I know that Jesus said the gates of hell would not prevail against his church. But boy, it sure seems like we've had a lot of just the walls are not caving in. I don't mean to say that, but they are certainly there's an attack upon the church. I think it comes first of all because the Bible is being challenged to all of its authority, and whether or not there's any truth or it can be any value found in the Bible, that's being questioned. I think one of the surprising things to me is the fact that we have people who come to church and they're here maybe once a month and they're considered, an active member. And I'm going, how can that be? How can you just attend church once a month and be an active member? I think the value of the authority of God, I guess, is the real issue, the bottom line, that either He is the one who created this world and He is the one who set it all in motion, or He isn't. And if He isn't, then we don't need to be here today. But I believe that He is the one who did that, and therefore we need to be in His presence. We need to be in worship on the Lord's Day, whether it's by by video or technology is phenomenal. We have the same thing at our church, and so from that standpoint, I think that's the thing that really concerns me the most. And I'm sure some of you are aware of who Ben Merrill is, but Ben Merrill is in his 90s now, and just a phenomenal preacher in the St. Louis area. But his big concern is once this is over, once we get back to what we would call our new norm, whatever that's going to be, that there's going to be a lot of people who are not going to come back. And the fact that we have lost a sense of community in the process, and that has just been, that has riddled, I think, the church. I've looked at the Christian Standard, which last month's issue talked about the churches that had their COVID, the pre-COVID attendance, and then their online attendance during COVID, and those that had some church going on, and then what's going to happen in the future. Well, I'm just stunned when I see that we have churches that are half the size that they were, and even online has helped, but wow, where are all those people? What's going on? So.
I share those concerns with you. I think that the authority of God is going to be questioned, and everything's going to fall that tries to replace that authority. But I think the community aspect, I agree with you. I think that's a concern. I think as not just as a church, but as a society, we have to figure out what community looks like.
Right.
Because it is very different. So I'm anxious to see how that turns out. I'm looking forward to seeing how, because like you said, that the church may be getting beat on a little bit, but it's going to survive because God's going to make sure that it is.
It is.
I just want to be able to see what that is.
Yeah. You look around the world and see where the church has suffered and has been persecuted, and it's growing.
Yes.
I mean, it's growing. It's unbelievable. I saw some statistics in Ghana. What's happening in Ghana? I mean, it's just amazing to me. The number of new churches that are being established in Ghana, the number of people that are being baptized in Ghana.
Yes.
It's just incredible.
It is. It is. You alluded to it, I think, a little bit earlier when you talked about when you went to school and growing up at Westside. But what made you want to be a part of Lincoln Bible Institute, Lincoln Christian College, and Lincoln Christian University, okay? As a student, okay? And then, like you said, you got there and you never left, okay?
That's true.
What made you want to go there as a student and then stay as a faculty member, and then just throw in how many different roles or hats you've worn at the school?
Okay. It all began, my father was the minister at Westside, and I grew up in the church. I mean, not that I really had a choice, but
some of us can relate to that.
But I'm privileged. I truly believe that I am privileged because of that. We lived 2 doors from the church. I mean, 2 houses away from the church, and so Sunday we were there. I mean, every Sunday. There wasn't a choice. It wasn't are we going to go to church today? No, there's the church. We need to be there. So it was never, and I never felt as if my parents pressured me to go. I never felt like I had to go. I wanted to go. It was just a joy, and it was Sunday morning, it was Sunday night, it was Wednesday night. My mom took me along to youth group. She helped with the youth group at Westside, and I remember going over and sitting, trying to be quiet, and sitting there in youth group and listening. And then when I made the decision, I was a junior in high school, I made a decision I wanted to go I gave my life to full-time Christian service, what we call it then, and committed myself to that. And then when I was a senior, my folks both had graduated from Cincinnati. And so I just said to my dad, I said, where should I go to school? And he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to preach. I want to be like you. I want to preach. And he said, well, there's only one school that I know of that's really pushing that, promoting that, and that's Lincoln Bible Institute. And I said, fine, that's where I should go. And so up to Lincoln I went, and I can honestly tell you, though, however, that I was thrilled in 1962 when I was a sophomore that they changed the name of the school. I hated to tell people where I was going to school. I was going to an institute. I mean, the word Lincoln Bible was never a problem. Lincoln Bible just rolled off my lips, but institute was just because some of you know, there was an institute on the south side of Lincoln, Illinois. Okay? Yeah. And so I just hated, all my friends were going to colleges, universities, and everybody was going, and I was going to Lincoln Bible. And the fact that everybody knew that my football coach called me Matthew, that was the only biblical name that I knew that he knew of, although he referred to Jesus several times during practice and the games. But
when you did well, right?
Yeah. But anyhow, I was thrilled when we became Lincoln Christian College. That was a blessing from above. That truly was. And the funniest thing about that, Dave, is the fact that when Hargrove said it's going to be Lincoln Christian College, it was over. There was no
focus groups.
There were no focus groups. There was no going around talking with people, trying to get them to understand. Hargrove said it's going to be Lincoln Christian College. Okay, thank you. So,
same authority of the Bible there,
yeah.
Right? Yes.
And then when I stayed at Lincoln, they asked me if I would, wanted to stay. In fact, Mr. Henderson is the one who kept telling Mr. Webb, who was the academic dean, I want Lynn to stay. I want him to be my assistant coach, and he can run the physical education program and start its master's in New Testament and seminary. And so I went into Mr. Dean, or the dean called me in, and he said, Lynn, talk to Marion. I'd never known him as Marion. It was always Coach or Mr. Henderson, or even at that time, Dr. Henderson. And so I walked in, and he said, Marion's been talking to me, and he said he'd really like for you to stay, and I want you to stay. And so become in charge of physical education, become his assistant coach, and then when he retires, you can move into being the head coach. And I said, okay, that sounds like what I would enjoy, but I was still preaching at Pleasant Hill, and I did that for 13 more years on the weekends, driving back and forth. But besides being in charge of physical education and then being his assistant coach, then I became the head coach. I did the same thing in baseball with Mr. Henderson. And so I was the assistant coach, and I became the head coach, and I became the athletic director. I started teaching New Testament. I did that for about 10 years. And then I became I was involved in student services. And one of the questions that he was going to ask, but he struck it out here. He said, did you ever have a bad hair day? Well, it was a long hair day because I was the dean of women for a semester. The longest period of time in my life. I had no idea. Our dean of women decided to leave. Tom Ewald was the dean at the time, and she left, bless her heart. And
Tom Ewald?
Tom Ewald asked me.
She left.
No, he.
Oh, he asked you to. Okay.
She, the gal that was in charge.
I got you.
She left. He said, Lynn, could you just fill in and be the dean of women for a semester? I said, what'd you say? Yeah. Anyhow, but I went on. I was involved with admissions for 15 years. I became the dean of students for a while. I became, and then I started in with interim stuff because I was the interim president for 6 months. I was the interim director of advancement. I was the interim director of, I went back to being the dean of students because they brought 2 young men in, and I had to counsel them and bring them along. So I was doing the alumni work, but during that time, I was also helping again with dean of students. So I had a number of, it's harder for me even to go up to campus and show you all the offices that I had. And then they built the gym and put my name on it, put our name on it, the Laughlin name on it. And somebody said, well, I know you have an office there. I said, no, I never had an office in that building. Should have, but I didn't. So, But it's, Dave, it's like getting a road named after your family. So,
Well, yeah,
anyhow.
yeah, it's similar.
Yes.
Hey, as basketball coach, okay, you probably saw some amazing talent, and here at South Fork, we've heard about some of that amazing talent. So, who was the better basketball player, Lynn? You, Marion Henderson, Butch Donaldson, or Mike Breaux? And some of you don't know who all those names, but they've all been associated with South Fork at one point or another. So,
Well, I don't know if Dell Donaldson could identify a basketball 2 out of 3 times, so we'll dispense with
well, I
Dell
was going
real
to put Dan
quickly.
Clymer in there, but
Oh, you could, and he
I
couldn't.
knew he wouldn't.
I know he could
basketball was.
identify a basketball 2 out of 3 times, but Bro came out for basketball. He didn't stay out very long, which was a shame because, and he accused me one time. You know, he went on to be and still is a great preacher, and he accused me one time. I was in the audience that I cut him, and I went up to him afterwards. And I said, "I never cut anybody from the basketball team, particularly you. You left. Your cousins came, and they were much better than you." But I did not cut you. So, but Henderson was a great shooter. I mean, the guys that played with him when coach played basketball at Lincoln, it's all they could talk about. That two-handed, what they called the two-handed. Some of the older people here, the two-handed kiss shot, where the ball was, he had both hands on the ball and just right here and launch it, and he could.
Did they have the bottom of the peach basket cut out by then, or did
by then somebody broke it out.
Okay, they broke. Okay,
Yeah.
Just wondering how.
Yeah.
How far basketball had come during that time. So, hey, Lynn, let's jump into talking about some students, okay, and things that you've seen change there. What were students like when you first started working at the Bible College? Okay, just not as a student, but when you started really observing what was going on, what did you see in the students?
Well, I saw a lot of young people come who had, in my estimation, who had very good Bible knowledge. They were committed to doing something for the Lord. The reason they came was because they wanted to go into some kind of Christian service. Now I realized that as the years went on, that a number of those who came for those reasons, some of them didn't get into those things that they wanted to. But when they came, there was a commitment. I remember it was easy to get a group of people. If you were going to go somewhere on the weekend and somebody needed somebody to go, you had all kinds of volunteers. I'll go. And it wasn't like driving 15 minutes down the road. It was like 2 or 3 hours away. But the kids were ready to go. They were ready to serve. They wanted to be involved. I was on a gospel team, what they call a gospel team, my freshman year. And we went multiple places. I think, Terre Haute, Indiana, and other places of that nature. But we were over in Indiana, and we traveled throughout the state of Illinois. The kids were wanting to be involved, and they were not afraid of those kinds of things. And one of the things that I think that has concerned me is the fact that they came from churches where yesterday we had a mission committee. Actually, there was a mission board meeting at Tower Hill Christian Church where I go now, and they had the mission from Mexico in, and Hill and his wife Debbie Calderon were there, and it was amazing just to sit and listen to them talk about what's going on in Mexico and the churches that are thriving. And I know that when I was at Westside and the missionaries came, I was just enthralled. And back in the day, they didn't stay elsewhere. A lot of them stayed in our home. We were 2 doors from the church. And so I was constantly hearing great about good people, wonderful people who were serving God. And I was at camp at Lake Springfield, and they would always have a missionary there or somebody who represented some kind of mission. And so that was all around us. And unfortunately, that has just kind of disappeared, which is sad.
So contrast that then to what Bible University students are like today. Okay, you said there's an eagerness on their part, a willingness to serve. Is that still there, or is it different nowadays?
It's a different approach from the standpoint of not that many people are going out on the weekends to serve. Churches, number one, are not asking them to come out. I remember when I was in a sophomore and I was in homiletics, as you were, and you had to have so many sermons that you preached. And the problem today is the fact that we just don't have that many churches that would allow 18, 19-year-old kid to come in and preach on a Sunday morning. So, but back in the day, it was Sunday night, and you could find a church anywhere you wanted to go.
Because the preacher wanted the night off.
Yeah, he wanted a night off, and so we'll invite this 19-year-old kid to come in and, blunder through a sermon for, 10, 15 minutes, and he thinks he's talked half an hour, but he's only talked 10 minutes and been sweating hard. So,
and everybody's nodding.
Yeah, and everybody
and
smiling and being wonderful. But the point is that there are not those opportunities now for our students. Okay. And I think if it was available, I think that they would be willing to go. But they've not come in with the same surrounding, the same concept of what church life is all about, or what it could be.
Obviously, there's some great Christian kids that don't go to Bible colleges, okay, or Bible universities. They go to campuses, and they make a huge impact there. As you've been able to interact with those two different groups of people, okay, the Bible college students and the non-Bible college students, but still strong Christians, what do you see as the difference? I mean, what's the driving, what's the motivating thing for them?
Well, one of the things that I think is, for the kids that come to Bible college, the reason they've chosen to come to Bible college is because we still teach the Bible. It's 30 hours of Bible for everybody. It doesn't make any difference if you're a business major, you're a preaching major. If you're a preaching major, there was more than 30 hours of Bible. But if you were a music ministry major or a psychology major, you're going to get 30 hours of Bible. And so our kids that are coming now are still being taught the Bible. The kids that go off to universities, if they go to a campus ministry and they get plugged in, some of those campus ministries are dynamite. The one at Eastern has always been great. The one at Terre Haute at Indiana State has always been good. You can name the one at Purdue, the one at ISU got stronger and has done a pretty good job. But not, what's the amazing thing, and it bothers me, is the fact that a number of our Christian church kids that go to Bible college or that go to regular schools or universities or colleges are not necessarily hooking up with the ministry.
Connect.
They don't connect.
Right.
And 2 out of 3, their faith is gone. I mean, and maybe 1 out of 3 survive. And because they don't come back home, they don't find another church, or they don't find a church. They just kind of disappear. And they go in as strong kids. They've been to CIY, they've been to camp or whatever, but they get there and
I think it goes back probably to what you said originally was your main concern is the authority, God's authority has been questioned, and you go to a secular university and that's just even more, hammered at them. And if we can, teach our kids in churches how to think, and how to react and to live, those
Right.
Christian principles, then that's going to make a huge difference. So I think, I'm amazed at kids today who can go to, a secular campus and have, in my opinion, a huge, huge impact. On groups of people that I would never reach as a pastor or as a preacher, but they can because of who they are and how they're living. So I'm grateful, that there are those student ministries and those kids that are going there. So when you look at Bible college students today, Lynn, what do they need the most? Okay, or I'm sorry, let me change that. What do they care about the most? Okay, they come in and what do they want to do?
Most of them come in with an idea of doing something significant.
Yeah.
I mean, they really do. It's not like they come in with, a blank slate, but they really want to do something. And so what they find themselves doing, I know that our student cabinet has been a very strong influence of the school of late. And the young man that's in charge of it this year, Bryce, from Indiana, just a great young man. But his emphasis was upon, first it was on about community. Yeah. We are strong as a group, and we can become stronger as a group as the more we grow in Christ and the more that we serve. And so his emphasis was trying to get our kids out into the community to help serve, to do something.
To make a difference.
And to make a difference. Right.
Yeah.
To be able to, and the other thing that our kids are coming in with is the fact that they see injustice all the time. Some of our kids respond well to that. Some of the other kids I feel like they come in and their parents or people who've had influence on their life, they come in with some baggage about what is justice. They see a lot of injustice, but they're having trouble to figure out how to fix that, how to make it different.
Yeah.
And I can also tell you that I know when I was growing up in Springfield as a kid, I went to Springfield High School. We had 4 black kids in the school. 4 at Springfield High School when I was in high school. All the other black kids were at Fichens, which is now Southeast, or Lamphere. And we only had 4 in the entire high school. We had 2,000 students, there were only 4. But our kids are growing up, if you went to Springfield High now, it's probably 50-50 or maybe even more than that. And so our kids are coming in with a different attitude in many cases, and not always the best, which is not a pleasing thought to me at all.
Yeah, I've kind of sensed that, there's a strong desire in youth today to really make an impact in their communities.
Mm-hmm.
And social issues are, up there.
It's huge.
And being able to present social issue, correcting social issues from a biblical, worldview and a biblical perspective, we all know that's the only answer. That's the way that it's going to work.
Yeah.
So I'm glad, that you guys are doing that and helping them, to have those opportunities. So, hey, Lynn, you've made a million contacts, okay? In fact, I've even heard that when Siri has trouble finding a number for somebody, she contacts Lynn. Because how big is your Rolodex? I mean, I'm sure you started out with a Rolodex, and now it's probably on your phone, but how many contacts do you have in that thing? I mean, I've heard everybody calls you, even Siri.
Well, I don't know about Siri, but a lot of people do call me. And I tell them I truly am blessed because of the fact that I've been at school that long.
Yeah.
And I've had students that were students when I was there, people who were older than me, and I knew them because they probably had been at West Side at some point in time, and I met them when I was in high school or at camp, because a lot of the Bible college people were at camps, and Henderson Coach was at camp when I was at camp. And I'm not going to tell you the story because I had to tell him one time. A story about camp, and so he said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, that was me." Anyhow,
he didn't believe it, though. I'm sure.
I'm sure he did.
He couldn't believe that.
But I've known these people, and I've known and now their kids are coming or their grandkids are coming, and I can relate to that, and I know that, and God has blessed me with a good memory. And I've got an orange book that was the alumni book, and there's a lot of stuff written down in it. But my wife teases me because I've got in my phone, I go like this because it used to be there on my hip, and now anyhow, there's well over 1,100 numbers in my phone as we speak.
And the amazing thing is, he knows when he sees somebody's face who it is, and immediately he recalls that, okay? Most of us are going like, I can't remember your name, type thing. This guy remembers everybody's name, okay? In fact, if he met you back in 1962, he probably knows who you are today, okay? We'll give you a test later.
Okay.
Lynn, there's a couple things I want to talk a little bit about the health of Lincoln Christian University and kind of what's going on, even in Christian universities. You mentioned, that your parents went to Cincinnati. Cincinnati's closed. Okay, Cincinnati no longer exists, but Lincoln Christian University does. So, what do you see taking place in the Christian education world that? And I want to expand that out of just the independent Christian churches, okay? Because there are other universities like Olivet and people like that. They're Christian-based. They're just exploding. They're doing great stuff. They have great opportunities. They're teaching a lot of Bible, sending out missionaries, that kind of stuff. Why is it that some are doing so well and others aren't? And then if Lincoln were to undergo a health assessment right now, okay, how would you pronounce her health status?
Well, to the first question, and that is the fact that the health of our schools, just our church schools. Right now, we've had 3 Cincinnati was flagship school for the longest time, and when they closed their doors, it was like, how could that happen?
Yes.
How could that happen? And some of you know who Bob Russell is, and I'm not name dropping, but I played basketball against Bob when he was a student at Cincinnati, and we're still good friends. Talk to him quite often. I called him and I just said, Bob, I can't imagine what it would be like to have my school, my alma mater, close. And he was really upset. And then Minnesota Bible College became Crossroads College, and they closed. And Nebraska Christian was a good school. Dick Walmsley from Taylorville went out, was their president for a while, and then he came back to Taylorville, and they were seemingly doing well, and they're closed. Hope International, one of the questions was, that you posed to me was like, would we be an organ donor? Well, Cincinnati closed because they tried to reach out to Johnson, and they said to Johnson, because Johnson had already reached out and snagged up Florida Christian, paid off a hefty bill for them and kept them alive. And then Cincinnati said, can you help us? And Johnson said, we'd like to. And they started talking, and then all of a sudden Cincinnati said no, because they demanded that they would have half of their trustees would be half the trustees for Johnson. And Johnson said, you're the ones that are in trouble, not us. Yeah. And they said, no, we're not going to do that. I mean, we'll take a couple of your board members, but it's not going to be half. Cincinnati stepped away. They closed. Hope decided to help Nebraska, and they did it for 3 years, but it cost them $1 million each year to keep them afloat. And the other thing that I've always been amazed is, like Nebraska, there's not that many Christian churches in Nebraska, and therefore they had a hard time. Minnesota only has less than 100 Christian churches in the entire state, plus the largest congregation there was something like 250. So you had churches that were smaller, and they really couldn't support the school. I think personally, what's going to end up happening, because we have a number of schools that are smaller, they're struggling right now. Summit out in Nebraska is a small school. Mid-South is a small school. Mid-Atlantic is a smaller school. Well, I can tell you this, Atlanta Christian College became Point University, and they basically don't have a Bible department at their school anymore. It's a school, and I know that there's a Christian emphasis, but they just don't have what they used to have. So it's like, if you're going to exist, you're probably not going to be a Bible college, and I foresee several of our schools closing, and when they do, I think Johnson will be the last to close if that happens. And the other thing is, if indeed some of the bills that are in our legislature and our national government right now, if that happens, all of our schools will close. Yeah. Because we will not be able to exist because of what is coming down the pike. Yeah. Yeah. And the reality is, if some of those bills pass, that's exactly what will happen, because we will be forced to say things, do things, hire people that, we have to be very careful what we're doing right now. At school, we used to rent out buildings on campus. We don't rent that anymore, because if you say yes to this group and this group comes along and they're opposed to everything that you believe in, and you say no to them, you're going to end up in court and you will lose.
Which is probably why your new president, our new president, is an attorney.
God did a wonderful...
Tell us about how you feel about Lincoln right now.
Well, I can tell you this. I was pleased when Keith Ray left as president and they began to look for somebody, and they hired Don Green. To me, he was the only person they could have hired. They wanted to do, our trustees wanted to do a national search. It just so happened that when the company that they hired somebody to be their point man, helping us to find a president, so happened that he had been at Lincoln for 1 year, and we played basketball together, and he was a friend, a real good friend. Coincidence. And he said, Lynn, why don't you want to be the president? I said, I was for 6 months. No, thank you. Not looking to be the president. I was president for 6 months, and it was a long 6 months. And I said no, and I'm too old. no, we don't even. But Don Green is the person you need to hire. And eventually, he was hired and became the president. And he was what we needed at that moment. God has always done that for Lincoln, in my estimation. And truly, Silas McCormick, God got him ready for this job. I mean, went off, got his education at Lincoln, then he went over to the University of Illinois and got a PhD in education. He went to Ohio State and got a PhD as a lawyer and came back and was at a law firm here in Springfield and decided he wanted to come and join us about 8 or 9 years ago, and has been an excellent person for us in the roles that he filled previously. And then his wife said to him, "Why don't you go ahead and put your name in as the president?" And I know he was surprised that Anna said that, but she said, "I think you would do well and you would like to do it." So, and we are blessed because of that. I can tell you that.
Yeah, he's really sharp. I've known Silas since he was in 4th grade over in Decatur, and great young man. And I think he understands students. He understands their social, desires, but he can also lead that in a very healthy way. So, Lynn, we're pretty much almost out of time here. Let me just close with one more question, okay? And this kind of brings it home to South Fork. We're a small rural church, okay? We have limited youth. We hope to grow that. But how best can South Fork support ministries like Lincoln Christian University and other Christian institutions? How best can we do that?
Well, there's two ways. Obviously, I know that this congregation has supported our school financially through the years. You've always been a part of who we are. And we couldn't ask for anything better than you continue to support us. We have had churches who have dropped us because they felt like their support needed to be elsewhere, whatever. So we truly need financial support. And the other thing is, and I am a firm believer, we need prayer. The school needs constant prayer from that standpoint. It's harder now to recruit students. And this is not just Lincoln. This is across the board for all of our schools. You mentioned Olivet, and I heard yesterday that Judson College may be closing.
Really?
Yeah, and I'm just stunned. I am absolutely stunned. And I was stunned when McMurray closed, over in Jacksonville. I couldn't believe that they were closing. But that's going to happen more and more, in my estimation, because of the financial situation. So you all can pray that we will become stronger and try to influence anybody that you possibly know or care about or think might be interested in coming to Lincoln to help them understand what they can do with themselves and whether it's your grandchildren or who it is. To think about the possibility of being involved, because one of the questions you asked me was, would you do this again? And I would be a preacher. Yeah. I would do it all over again, and I'd be a preacher. But I think that's all that we can really ask, that church continue to support us. It might be that, you could call up there next fall and find a couple of students that are far away from home and invite them to come down and to the church and bring them into your home and get to know them. And that used to happen. And I think those days, I'd love to see some of those days come back from that standpoint.
As soon as we get rid of those COVID restrictions, so
That's okay.
students can go back and forth.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea. So, Lynn, thank you. We're going to wrap up with just a word of prayer, and
Okay.
then you're going to help me out with elder orientation here in a minute. But let me just pray for you
Okay.
and the school
Thank
right
you.
now. Would you pray with me? Father God, thank you that there has been a school just right up the road called Lincoln Christian Bible Institute, Lincoln Christian College, and now Lincoln Christian University, God, because it's impacted so many lives here. And God, I thank you for the text that I received this morning from someone who knew this interview was going to take place and just shared how excited they were for the lasting impact that institution has had on 4 people directly, closely engaged in their life. And so, God, I thank you for the faithfulness of men like Lynn and Hargrove and Henderson and just McCormick, everybody, God, just thank you. We are blessed because of them. So, God, I pray that you give Lynn great satisfaction in what he has been able to do, and that you would continue to use him every breath that you give him, God, use him to continue to forward your kingdom here on this earth. And God, I thank you for Lynn Laughlin. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.